MI5 chief Andrew Parker has just told the UK that a terrorist attack has been stopped every single month since the Westminster Bridge attacks. I was reading the news last night and it was talking about a speech that was going to happen the next morning. So it happened this morning by Andrew Parker, the chief of MI5. And in the speech, they said last night he was going to talk about the threat of terrorism in the UK and how one terrorist attack has been stopped every month since the Westminster Bridge attacks. One terror attack every single month over the last year or so. Now, if that isn't a fundamental threat to everything we are, to every level of society, then I don't know what is. You know, we've been banging on about this far-right terrorism threat for ages now. But what we're seeing here is real terrorist threats happening once a month. Now, and let's not be, cautious about this. Let's be honest and say that actually these attacks, more often than not, are Islamic. They are Islamic, and we know why they're happening. I talked about this a few weeks ago, actually, about how as ISIS is crumbling in the east, they're migrating to the west, and they're utilizing migration channels. They're utilizing the fact that countries like Germany are just allowing literally millions of people through their borders. And as they come over from the east into the west, and then when they get into the UK, what do you think they're going to do when they're in the UK? I mean, it's not just real terrorism like this, but it's different kinds of jihad, financial jihad, sex jihad within the country. I mean, so none of this is new, none of this is surprising, but it is nice to finally have some numbers. One attack every single month. And that's probably not even counting the, well, first off, it's not counting the attacks that go through, and it's not accounting for the attacks that, the jihadi attacks that are done by like one person. You know, a guy stabs someone in the tube station shouting Allahu Akbar. It's not always registered as a terrorist attack. It's usually some guy always got mental health problems or he's addicted to drugs or something. So one a month, plus the ones that actually happen, plus the ones that aren't properly recorded as terrorist attacks. And I mean, look at this we're facing. This is incredible. But what I noticed about the coverage from last night compared to the coverage today is that last night it was all about terrorism threat, and now it's all about Russia. I mean, just look at the news. I mean, Sky News here, Brexit is precisely what Vladimir Putin wants to see. MI5 chief, BBC News, Russia trying to undermine European democracies. Daily Mail, the head of MI5, Andrew Parker, will take aim at Vladimir Putin. I mean, why are we focusing on Russia right now? I mean, okay, we can talk about Russian meddling till the cows come home. I get it. I get maybe there's an issue for some people there, but at the end of the day, we're looking at a life or death situation here, and we seem more interested in Russia. So let's take a look at this article from the BBC. Parker said, whilst Daesh, ISIS, has now lost its false caliphate and its strongholds in Syria and Iraq, tackling the group as a movement will require sustained international focus for years to come, he said. As I speak today, they are seeking to regroup and the threat seems likely to persist. As I say, I've already talked about this before, the threat will persist. For as long as ISIS crumbles in the east, they're going to make use of where we are weak in the west. And so he went on to talk about Russia, but what I think is really interesting about this, and please don't call me a conspiracy theorist, but I think it's important to note, is that he started talking about the importance of the UK dealing with the EU. Now, we're looking at stories that are showing how Theresa May is asking for the public's help on the EU, which I'm going to talk about tomorrow. And we're seeing a struggling Brexit process. You know, the Brexit process is not going well. And there's talk about the customs partnership, the customs union, and so on. So when the chief of MI5 pipes up and says, quote, cooperation between the UK and other European intelligence services has never been as important as it is now in facing up to twin threats posed by terror groups such as Islamic State and states such as Russia. When I see this kind of talk, I can't help but think, is this a very good way for non-Brexiteers, for pro-EU people, to try and tap into the mind of the populist right in the UK and tell them, well, here's a reason why we shouldn't have full Brexit. You know, ISIS is happening and we need to talk to the EU to solve it. Well, I question that. How good has the EU been on stopping ISIS? The EU has basically allowed ISIS to persist. The EU has let ISIS through its borders. And we need to work with the EU to stop this threat. What good is Angela Merkel going to do with ISIS? How is she going to help us with ISIS? What is Angela Merkel going to do to stop terrorism? If anything, she's aiding it. So I do honestly see this as an attempt to try and get the populace right on board. Or well, maybe we do need to work with the European Union. No, we need to bring the EU crashing down. Bring it down completely. Get rid of traitors like Angela Merkel. Don't work with the EU. Maybe we work with the leaders in Europe, in these countries that understand the threat. Geert Wilders, Marine Le Pen. And then we work with the elected leaders in Eastern Europe. I mean, in Hungary, we've got Viktor Orban. In Poland, we've got the Law and Justice Party. The new Italian government is formed from the Five Star Movement and the League. Amazing. Sebastian Kurz in Austria. They're the people we need to be working with to stop terrorism. And when we learn that once a month, this country's been attacked or attempted to be attacked by terrorists from ISIS, maybe some other terrorists as well. Some of these far-right terrorists you sometimes hear about. When we hear that we are being attacked so often from this religion and ideology that obviously hates us, and when we see people dying in our own streets, we see people getting stabbed in tube stations by mentally ill drug addicts, we know there's a problem. And I'm very sorry, Andrew Parker. I'm less interested in Russia. I'm less interested in that right now. I'm more interested in solving this problem. And that means I'm also not particularly interested in working with the EU to solve it, because they won't solve it. They will never solve it. The EU is not interested in solving terrorism. There are leaders in Europe who are interested, and as we're seeing in Hungary, in Poland, in Italy, these people are coming to power. We will stop terrorism, but it will have nothing to do with the EU. If you want to see more from me and the rest of the Rebel team, remember to download our app on the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store, and like and subscribe.